This first panel is not globalization, localization. Our first speaker is Dr. Vandana Shiva. It's very glad to be up here with longtime friends and associates, and Dr. Shiva has been one of those, working, as you know, on so many things, written so many books, The Violence of the Green Revolution, Staying Alive, Stolen Harvest, and there's one of her new books is Sacred Seeds. She's been a founding member of the IFG for many years. She's the founder of Navdanya, her organization in India, which does tremendous work, and just received numerous accolades and awards. So let's just hear from her, because I think that's what we're all here for. So please welcome Dr. Vandana Shiva.
I'm here to honor Jerry. Thank you, Jerry, for bringing us all together as the International Forum on Globalization and bringing us all together for this teaching. Thank you for your tireless efforts, your visions, and your leadership. And with the leadership of Jerry at Seattle, the mobilization done by the International Forum on Globalization and other groups, we stopped the legal movement of the WTO. It really hasn't moved beyond Seattle. They pretend to have done a Doha round, but even Pascal Lamy, the last Director General, had to admit that the WTO was in intensive care. That doesn't mean that globalization is dead, because the interests that were using free trade are trying to find new ways to survive. And the new free trade agreements, like the Transatlantic Partnership, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, are examples. But another example is this ad that was in the Wall Street Journal while I was coming over from the West Coast. It says, how can it be so good if farms are so far away? There's a young girl eating an apple. And then the ad goes on to say, good question, because the more cities expand, the further out we have to go for the food we eat. At Hitachi, we're responding with innovative approaches that address the entire food chain to make things better for everyone. Using our advanced information technologies such as cloud computing, we can help producers improve their efficiency with the latest data on supply and demand, growing conditions and weather trends. With smart logistics, we can help deliver the choice and the quality consumers deserve. And these are just a few of the fresh ideas we have for cities who are hungry for solutions. Hitachi Social Innovation, it's our future. Now, of course, it's full of flaws. Because if cities expand, you just have to expand the local a little bit. Expanding cities doesn't mean you go to the other end of the world to source your food. It definitely doesn't mean that every farmer gets locked into new control. Because when they say cloud computing that helps producers improve their efficiency, they're talking about a control system. I work with farmers, and our farmers have the best intelligence. For a while they were confused. They were made to believe the Green Revolution and its chemicals will improve their lives. Some of them were confused that GMO BT cotton will make them millionaires. But once that layer of confusion is removed, all the intelligence is there. And the intimate relationships of real people with real ecosystems, real biodiversity, real seed, real soil, nothing can replace that. Nothing. But of course, the technology myth is allowing those who failed us in the Green Revolution, who failed us with the genetically engineered seeds, pretending now to bring us the next step of miracle by wider, deeper concentration. So Monsanto, of course, started trying to take the control of the seed with the rules on intellectual property in the WTO. Because we built movements, we defended our seed freedom and defended the freedom of the seed and biodiversity, because we made sure our laws reflected this. For example, India's laws recognize that biological systems and processes aren't invented, so you can't get an invention on seeds and plants and animals. So now there's a new US threat to change those laws in India. But while Monsanto tried to privatize the seed, and let me give you just 2 figures. In this country alone, seed patenting and royalty collection is $10 billion annually from farmers. For something that Monsanto never made, the seed reproduces itself, and yet every time the seed is reproducing, they're saying, our manufacture. This is our manufacture. This is our product, our invention, our engineering. The next step they're seeking for globalization is Monsanto's bought up the Climate Corporation, which controls climate data, which is the vision in the Hitachi ad. They bought up the biggest soil data corporation. And they're desperate to replace knowledge, intelligence, wisdom with big data. On the seed issue, the patents are there, but now there's a new attempt to criminalize seed saving. Notices have been served to seed libraries in Pennsylvania and Maryland. It's interesting that the laws to make local seeds illegal are 2004, same year when they tried to do it to us in India. But we did the satyagraha, the fight for truth, non-cooperation, and I collected 100,000 signatures from farmers and gave them to our Prime Minister and said, Gandhi taught us not to obey bad laws, like the salt laws. And we're not going to obey this one, because we have a higher law to obey. And that law comes from Gaia, from the biosphere, from the universe, and we're not going to be bullied. And we're not going to be made scared, just because Monsanto manages to write laws in country after country after country. As we were having a discussion in the green room, and Chris said, they are criminals, and what our new level of intelligence needs to think of is how we deal with criminals who are perpetuating crimes against the earth, crimes against humanity, and crimes against the future. Now, even though all this is packaged as technology, in reality it's packaged as religion. When the Green Revolution was brought to India, the seeds that responded to chemicals were called miracle seeds. Norman Borlaug, who got the Nobel Peace Prize, talked about the 12 people who he sent out to the world to spread chemicals and seeds. He called them his 12 apostles. More recently, there have been articles saying he should be anointed a saint for destroying Punjab, the most prosperous land in India, for pushing farmers to suicide, for creating a cancer epidemic so big that a train leaves Punjab, which is called the cancer train, for destroying the biodiversity and a viable economy. So technology is really being sold as religion. And we have asked to believe in it blindly, but technology is a tool, it needs assessment. And it needs assessments on the basis of higher values. And those higher values don't come from technology. They come from human values, they come from ecological values. In fact, the system that is being pushed to the next stage, with a lot of violence, a lot of corruption, a lot of destruction of democracy and our constitution, is so inefficient. I know David Ehrenfeld was here, who ages ago gave us the figures that for 10 units of energy input, you have 1 unit of food output. and then you feed that grain to animals in factory farms, then you get 10 units feeding 1 unit, 100 units going to one, and the new information on the waste. Beautiful book I read called The American Wasteland. 50% of the food being wasted on the farm because of uniformity, long distance transport, best before dates, all of it adds to food wastage. And in any case, what this system is producing is not food. It's commodities. And if it's eaten, I would call it anti-food. Because food is supposed to nourish us. Food is supposed to give us health. This food is killing us. It's killing the planet and it's killing us. We can do so much better. The United Nations has put out data this year, because it's the year of the family farm, that 70% of the food people eat comes from small farms. The industrial system accounts only for 30%. But it is destroying 75% of the planet, 75% of the biodiversity, according to the United Nations, 70% of the water, 70% of the soil, and 40% of the greenhouse gases are coming from this industrial system and globalized system. Shifting to the small, we produce more food, and we get rid of all the ecological destruction. I started Navdanya in 1987, when I realized there was this intention to patent seed through genetically engineering it and imposing laws worldwide to make seed patentable. It didn't work. There are only 4 crops in a few countries: corn, canola, soya, cotton, that are GMOs. It did drop the diversity of our food base. Globalization can only deal with uniformity. Localization is what nourishes diversity. Diversity and decentralization go together. And in our 30 years of work, with a very basic commitment to save the seed and protect biodiversity, we have found that farms that are biodiversity intensive and ecologically intensive, not chemical intensive, not fossil fuel intensive, not capital intensive, the biodiverse farms can feed 2 Indias. They can feed 2 times the world population. So this constant fear, oh, we'll be 10 billion, and how will we feed the world? Definitely not by turning a food system into an anti-food system. Not by destroying the planet that feeds us. That 30% figure linked to 75% destruction means that by the time you reach 45% of industrial food supply, there will be no planet. And you can't grow food on a dead planet. Not only is nourishment and nutrition much more on biodiverse farms, the distributed wealth is much higher. We've just released a new book. When we measure health and nutrition, we talk about nutrition per acre. Because what's normally measured in agriculture is yield per acre, but the yield doesn't tell you what's in the plant. It doesn't tell you what it costs to produce. It didn't tell you the ecological damage. It doesn't tell you what happened to the farmers. So yield is an empty term, and a term of technological colonization. By making us blind to the diversity that's destroyed, the quality of the food, the cost of production, the inefficiency. So we generated health per acre for measuring nutrition. And now we've generated wealth per acre. Because all of the chemicals in agriculture, all of the patented GMO seeds are pushed with only one objective, the objective of profits at any cost. And not only are they pushed with the idea of only profits, they're based, in my view, of deep ecological and ethical ignorance. They're also based on violence in the case of agriculture. Every chemical technology in agriculture has its roots in war. Chemical fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides began as war chemicals. So it's not an accident that in agriculture they perpetrate that war against the earth, against species, and against humans. We are now in the 30th anniversary of the disaster of Bhopal. And I've always said Bhopal was not an accident. Those chemicals were meant to kill human beings. It's just that when they came in a concentrated way, we could see the deaths, but usually they're getting dispersed in our ecosystem, and pesticide-related deaths are huge. So we did this calculation for India, wealth per acre. We said, let's count the negative externalities of a chemical industrial agriculture. What are we bearing? And let's count the economics, the new economy of working with the earth to provide food to humans. $1.6 trillion is the externalities, including the fact that getting small peasants dependent on chemicals and seeds ends up pushing them into debt, and the debt pushes them to suicide. And the figures from the government of India from 1995, when globalization started and seed monopolies could start to be established, till 2013, the figures of farmers' suicides are 291,000. Most of these are concentrated in the areas of seed dependency, particularly cotton, particularly BT cotton. But we didn't just measure the wealth per acre. We moved to see, in these 30 years, all these amazing farmers who've been saving seeds, using seeds in production, doing organic production that's chemical-free, and then Navdanya as a movement has created the biggest organic distribution network through fair trade in the country. So the combination of your own seeds and seed sovereignty, ecological agriculture, which means no cost for toxic chemicals, and fair trade, which means a just price, on an average, the farmers are earning 10 times more than farmers locked into buying the seed, using chemicals, and constantly being dependent on selling what they grow to a market that doesn't care for them. I'll give you just 2 examples. So there's a huge push for hybrid corn, which is not going to human food. 75% hybrid corn in India, and I would say for Africa and across the world, is going for biofuel and animal feed. In India, it's going largely for animal feed. Compared to that, our forgotten foods like our millets, the mandua, ragi, jangora, amazingly rich crops that need no input at all. They're generating 10 times the income of the corn. And our work is to make sure that the propaganda machinery, that is what everything has been reduced to. Journalism has been reduced to that, science has been reduced to it, government policy has been reduced to it, government extension has been reduced to it, to make sure the farmers see what their own brothers and sisters are able to achieve. Soybean is another crop that's being pushed. Corn and soya, it would look like we live on corn and soya. In the case of soya, we have a wonderful indigenous soya called the bhat. And it is very nutritious and it can be cooked at home. But the other soya, the American soya, has to be sent to factories where it's solvent extracted for oil and that, then for animal feed, and we basically are given some of that leftovers from the animal feed as these silly things called nutri-nuggets. The alternative is beans in the high Himalayas. We have 70 varieties of beans. And we did a calculation with our farmers. The cost of production is so low, the quality is so high that people are willing to pay any amount, 100 times higher income for those who saved their seed of the kidney bean and did not go for soya cultivation. So the way is clear. Align with the earth and her laws, work for justice, and don't be blinded by propaganda parading as technology and science. Thank you.